Hi everyone, my name is Vincent, and today we'll be reading Fazbear Frights, Volume 1, Story 1, Into the Pit. So just some context, there's 3 stories in this one book. Into the Pit, Count the Weight, and To Be Beautiful. There's 3 characters in each of these stories: Oswald, Sarah, and Millie. Sarah and Millie are in the other 2 stories. I'm not going to reveal what stories they're in though. Anyway, let's begin. The dead possum's still there. Oswald was looking out the passenger window at the grey furry corpse on the side of the road. Somehow, it looks even deader than it did yesterday. Last night's rain hadn't helped. Nothing looks deader than a dead possum, Oswald's dad said. Except this town, Oswald mumbled, looking at the boarded up storefront and display windows, which just were displaying nothing but dust. What's that? Oswald's dad said. He was already wearing the stupid red vest they put him in when he worked at the deli counter at the snack space. Oswald wished he had to wait to put it on until after he was dropped at school. This town, Oswald said, louder this time. This town looks deader than a dead possum. His dad laughed. Well, I don't guess I can argue with that. 3 years ago, when Oswald was 7, there had been actual stuff to do here. A movie theatre, a game and card store, and an ice cream shop with an amazing waffle cones, but the mill had closed. So there was this mill in the town where Oswald lived, but it closed 3 years ago. And it was basically the source of income for all the families. But now the town's dead, completely abandoned. The mill had basically been the reason the town existed. Oswald's dad had lost his job, and so had hundreds of other kids. Mums, dads, lots of families had moved away, including Oswald's best friend, Ben, and his family. Oswald's family had stayed because his mum's job at the hospital was steady, and they didn't want to move far away from Grandma. So Dad ended up with a part-time job at the snack space, which paid $5 an hour, less than he made in the mill, and Oswald watched the town die. One business after another shut down like the organs in a dying body, because no one had the money for movies or games or amazing waffle cones anymore. You excited for the last day of school? Dad asked. It was one of those questions they're always asked, like how was your day and did you brush your teeth? Oswald shrugged. I guess. There's nothing to do when Ben's gone. School was boring and home's boring too. When I was 10, I wasn't home in the summer until I got called for supper, Dad said. I rode my bike, played baseball, and got in all sorts of trouble. Are you saying I should get in trouble? Oswald said. No, I'm saying you should have fun. Dad pulled into the drop-off line in front of Westbrook Elementary. Have fun! He made it sound so easy. Oswald walked through the school's double doors and ran smack into Dylan Cooper, the last person he wanted to see. Oswald was apparently the first person Dylan always wanted to see, though his mouth had spread a wide grin. Dylan was the tallest kid in 5th grade, and clearly enjoyed looming over his victims. Well, if it isn't Oswald the Ocelot, he said, his grin spreading impossibly wider. That one never gets old, does it? Oswald walked past Dylan, and was relieved when his tormentor chose not to follow him. When Oswald was in 5th grade, his classmates were preschoolers, and there was a cartoon of one of the little kids channels of a big pink ocelot named Oswald. As a result, Dylan and his friends started calling him Oswald the Ocelot. And when he was first day of kindergarten, and it had never stopped. Dylan was the kind of kid who'd pick on anything that made you different. If it hadn't been Oswald's name, it would have been Freckles or his cold click. The name call had gotten so much worse this year in US history. When did they learn that? The man who shot John F. Kennedy was named Lee Harvey Oswald. Oswald would rather be Ocelotl than an assassin. Since it was the last day of school, there was no attempt to do any kind of real work. Mrs. Misham had announced the day before that the students were allowed to bring their electronics as long as they took responsibility for anything getting lost and broken. This announcement meant no effort, and it would be made towards any educational activities for any kid of any kind. Oswald didn't have any modern electronics. True, there was one laptop at home, but the whole family shared it, and he wasn't allowed to bring it to school. He had a phone, but it was the saddest most amount of date model and manageable, and he didn't want to take it out of his pocket because he knew any kid who saw it would make fun of how pathetic it was. So while the other kids played games on their tablets or handheld consoles, Oswald sat. Just sitting became intolerable. He took out an old notebook and pencil and started to draw. He wasn't the best artist in the world, but he could draw well enough though. His imaginations were indefinable, and there was a certain cartoony quality about his drawings that he liked. The best thing about the drawings though was that he could get lost in it. It's like he fell into the paper and became part of the scene he was creating. It was a welcome escape. He didn't know why, but lately he had been drawing mechanical animals, bears, bunnies and birds. He imagined them being human-sized and moving with the jerkiness of a robot in an old-fashioned science fiction movie. They were furry on the outside, but the fur had a hard metal skeleton filled with gears and circuits. Sometimes he drew the animals exposed metal skeletons or sketched them with the fur peeled back to show some of the mechanical workings underneath. So this is a bit of an nod to the withered animatronics from FNAF 2. It was a creepy effect, like seeing a person's skull peeking out from beneath the skin. Oswald was so immersed in his drawings that he was startled when Mrs. Machine turned the lights off to show a movie. Movies always seem like the teacher's final act of depression on the day before break, a way to keep the kids quiet and relatively still for half an hour before setting them loose for the summer. The movie Mrs. Sheen chose was in Oswald's option, too babyish for a room full of 5th graders. It was about a farm with talking animals, and he had watched it before. But he watched it again, because really, what else did he have to do? At recess, kids stood around tossing a ball back and forth and talking about what they were going to do over the summer. I'm going to football camp. I'm going to basketball camp. I'm going to hang out in my neighbour's pool. I'm going to stay with my grandparents in Florida. Oswald sat on a bench and listened for him. There would be no camps and no pool memberships and no trips because there was no money. And so he drew pictures, played his old video games that had usually been beaten 1,000 times, and maybe go to the library. If Ben was still here, it would be different. Even if they were just doing the same old stuff, they'd be doing it together, and Ben could always make Oswald laugh. Ruffling on video game characters or doing a perfect impersonation of one of their teachers. He and Ben had fun no matter what they did, but the summer about Ben yearned before him, a wine and empty. Most days, Oswald's mum worked from 12 PM until 12 AM, so his dad had to make dinner. Usually they got by on frozen meals like lasagna or chicken pot pie, or on a cold cut and potato salad from the snacks-based deli. That was still good enough to eat, but not good enough to sell. When Oswald's dad did cook, it usually required boiling water. While Dad got their dinner ready, Oswald's job was to feed Jinx, their very spotted or spoiled black cat. Oswald often thought he had been used to the same amount of cooking skill in Operation Jinx, kind of a stinky cat food his dad used in his dinner preparations. Tonight, Oswald and his dad were sitting down to plates of blue box mac and cheese and canned corn his dad had zapped in the microwave. It was a very yellow meal. You know, I was thinking, Dad said, squirting ketchup to his macaroni and cheese. Why did you do that? Oswald wondered. You all have to stay home by yourself. Some. But I don't like the idea of you staying by yourself the whole day while your mum and I are at work. I was thinking you can run into town with me in the mornings, you could drop by the library, and you can bring the surf the net. Oswald couldn't let this one slide. How out of date could his dad be? No one says surf the net anymore, Dad. They do now. Because I just said it. Dad forks up some macaroni. Anyway, although you can hang out in the library in the mornings, when you get hungry, you can head over to Jeff's Pizza for a slice and a soda. And I can pick you up once my shift's over at 3. Oswald considered for a moment. Jeff's Pizza was a kind of weird. It wasn't dirty exactly, but it was running down. The vinyl on the booth seat had been repaired with duct tape, and the plastic letters had fallen off the menu board above. The counters, so the listing toppings include pepperoni and anger. It was clear that Jeff's Pizza used to be something bigger and better than it was now. For tons of unused floor space and unusual electronic outlets along the base of the wall. Also on the far wall was a small stage, even though there was no performances on there. Not even so much as a karaoke night. It was a strange place. Sad, and not where I wanted to be, like the rest of the town. That being said, the pizza was decent, and more important, it was the only pizza in town, if you didn't count the kind of frozen food department at the snack space. The good few restaurants in town, including Gino's Pizza and Marco's Pizza, which unlike Jeff's had real pizza maker names, had closed its doors not long from the mill had. So you'll give me money for the pizza, Oswald asked. Since Dad lost his job, Oswald's allowances dwindled to practically nothing. Dad smiled, a sad kind of smile. He seemed to Oswald, son, we're bad off. We're not so bad off. I can't spot you $3.50 a slice in a soda. Okay, Oswald said. It was not hard to say no to a warm gooey cheese slice. This wasn't a school night and it wouldn't be for quite some time. Oswald stayed up after Dad went to bed and watched an old Japanese monster video or movie with Jinx curled up purring on his lap. Oswald had seen a lot of B-grade Japanese horror film. This one, Zenrelax, and I can't pronounce some of these words, so sorry if I don't. Nakazendrix was new to him. Also, Zenrelax also looks like the dragon thing. God's sake, let's word again. Nakazendrix reminded him of the mechanical animals he drew when he stripped them of their fur. He laughed at the movie's special effects, and the train destroyed was clearly a toy, and how the actor's lips movement didn't match the dubbed in English. Somehow, though, he always found himself rooting for Zendrex, even though he was just a guy in a rubber suit. Somehow, he managed to have a lot of personality. In bed, he tried to count his blessings. He didn't have Ben, but he had a monster movie and the library and lunchtime pizza slices. It was better than nothing, but it still wasn't going to be enough to keep him going all summer. Please, he waited with his eyes closed tight. Please let something interesting happen. Oswald woke up to the smell of coffee and bacon. The coffee he could do without, but the bacon smelled amazing. I am going to be only reading chapter in small bits, so chapters 1 to 10, 11 to 20, and stuff like that. So this is where I'm going to stop. So for now, this is part 1. And this is Vincent Saunders, signing off.